We have with us Saft, the founder of VATBox, an Israeli company. I think unlike a lot of the companies here, it's mostly active in Europe.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe tell us a few words about what you do.
Okay, so for the one of you who is not familiar with VATBox, so VATBox I think is playing in, sits on one of the most simple, even maybe boring business cases. We simply bring company money they constantly leaving behind by spending VAT all over the world, not just Europe. And because it's not that simple to understand where you spend and how much you spend and what is the way to get the VAT back, they just consider everything as an expense. And we know how to figure out how to find those transactions, how to basically understand exactly how much VAT was spent, what is the business expense, and from that point, complete the process and recover for them the VAT. Means we're starting with the client, saving his money, provide visibility and governance. Generally speaking, this is VATBox.
So you woke up one morning and said, I want to dedicate the next 5, 7, 10 years of my life to indirect tax. How does that happen? How does someone decide to do that?
So my background is not, of course, it's not coming from any financial industry, and of course not tax. You know, Israeli companies, they used to travel a lot since it's a small country, and the market is much bigger, and we spend a lot of money on travels. Travel expense is one of the largest budget in companies, Israeli companies and other companies as well. And eventually, when you spend something, when it comes to travel expense, in most of the case, it comes with VAT. In my previous company, I understood that I'm spending a lot of money, and in many cases, there's a VAT there. The VAT is not a cost. I can get the VAT back. I try to understand how much can I get and how much I'm getting actually, and I found out basically it's not a simple mission. When I finished my previous company, I tried to understand what is happening in the market, trying even to look at the big enterprise market, speaking about Fortune 500 companies. By the way, those guys, they used to spend above $1 billion annually on your travel expense, where there's like multi-millions that can be recovered on a yearly basis, saving to the bottom line. And I realized basically in many cases, they're just leaving the entire money, considered everything as an expense, because the level of challenge and the risk, the compliance side here, is not that simple and easy. And for them, multi-millions, it's important. And it's a real value, but the risk and the overhead is so high, so they're just leaving the money or taking just small of it.
So you mentioned Fortune 500. Can you mention some names of companies who use VATBox today?
Yes, I think that I would say the top 4 best industries for VATBox or the technology industry, from the Amazon, Dell, EMC, and many other technology companies using VATBox as a global service provider, going to the life science and pharmaceutical market from Roche, Eli Lilly, and others, all the way to manufacturers, leading manufacturer companies, consulting companies. Mainly, I would say basically every company can get that level of service. We just focus on the moment on the big enterprise, but the need and the challenge may be not the same, but it's there for every company. If they're living just 1,000 or 10 millions every year, it's there.
So I guess VAT is mostly a European issue, or maybe today a non-American issue, we would say. And you are, for an Israeli company, very focused on Europe, with offices in Amsterdam and London. How is it being an Israeli company focused on Europe as a primary market? I mean, most people around here go straight to the US, like Lemonade, like others. How is it working in Europe? What are the unique challenges?
I will start by saying that about 70% of our clients, originally US-based, yes, we sell them to the EU, means meeting the headquarters in the EU or in Europe. But at a high level, for your question, I would say that there are the best practices that are relevant for every country. It's very important to build the right team. It's all about team building and the leadership and so on. When you go to Europe, you have to understand every country. It's a different case. You have to adjust your messages. You have to adjust your sales cycle. It's very important to understand how to land and expand the deals. It's different from Germany to the UK, France, and so on. There are some countries who are considered as, I would say, early adopters, that if you want to go and have your first success stories and references in those countries, you better go to the Nordic countries or the English-speaking countries at the beginning. But then, of course, to be able to expand as expected at the top European countries. It's all about building the right teams, adjust all your business cycles and messages and so on, and at the same time, of course, be able to look at the global picture. I guess, by the way, you probably have maybe a different perspective as a European VC. How do you see Israeli, maybe American companies doing in Europe?
I think that we generally think that European companies, European corporates, European investors are more open to cooperating, to investing, and hopefully at some point to acquiring outside of Europe, and tech in general, and NOAH in Tel Aviv is a good example for that. And I hope we'll see more and more Germans particularly, but other Europeans coming to Israel to do business from the corporate side, from the venture side as well. So it's a booming industry right now in Europe, and but still is very early days. You spent your first 15 years in the army, right? What's more brutal, being a combat commander, working as a startup entrepreneur?
Yeah, of course, there's a big difference between being a commander in the army. I would say more and better than me did a lot of research about this startup nation and the part of the army in this culture and so on. And I can share and agree with many of the things that were raised in that space. I can say, no, the basic stuff for a startup is be able to face with impossible missions, be agile enough, be flexible enough, look at the challenge in the face and say, okay, I can make it. I will find a way to achieve it. It always comes with challenges. And even I think for serial entrepreneurs, there's always new things when you're coming to a new market or doing first time thing in a market. For me, I think that the most value that I gained from my years in the army. I guess you expect to hear more stories and stuff about my background.
We probably shouldn't.
Will not happen this stage,
probably shouldn't. For the last sort of 10 questions, where do we see VATBox in 3 years? Where are you?
So the challenge when it comes to VATBox, in the end of the day, it's also a big data company. Since the challenge with us is to be able to understand exactly the story of each and every transaction. How much was spent, where, for what, on behalf of who, and so on. Once you have the data, then you can apply this VAT recovery application, and there are a few other applications that are now based on the same data that we managed to capture and to validate using those AI tools. Other applications we're going to deploy, and we're deploying actually just because our client asked, are based on the same data. So I think in the end of the day, the level of data that VATBox sits today mostly in Europe, but as we go basically all over the world, since again VET you have all over the world. It's in Asia, it's in Gulf countries, it's in Russia, in Mexico, in Canada. It's almost in each and every country. So be able to sit at that level of data that basically came from big enterprise and give you a different view of different opportunities to support the companies and to support other parts of the industries. With that level of data, this is, I think, the future of VATBox. Maybe being more practical is, in one hand, to dominate the European market, and the other side, expand to the US, Asia, and other, I would say, regions. At the same time, use the same data and technology that we have to provide more value out of that data.
Well, I'll tell you, the only thing I never checked is if the ticker VAT is open on NASDAQ. We should check it for the future.
So this is a good chance to be the first one.
Exactly. Thank you very much.